We're Rob and Erica, founders of WonderCow, and today we're talking about how breastfeeding and lactation as a human relates to that of a cow, and
While not comparing your wife to a cow.
yep, and what it's like to be married to a dairy farmer who's my own personal lactation consultant. So Rob and I have four babies. So we've had a lot of experience with like the postpartum journey, and I've had the gift of breastfeeding all four babies. So I've learned a lot through each of those experiences, but also I've learned a lot from Rob as a dairy farmer. Turns out cows are very similar to breastfeeding women.
Okay, let me give some context around this whole conversation and what kind of spurred it from the beginning. So we have been married about 10 years and had four kids, like Erica said. And it's pretty common in the dairy industry and amongst my dairy farming friends to, when your wife has a baby, to compare them to a cow. And it's not I throughout the years, I think it totally makes sense because I was a dairy science major. I When you go to college, you learn everything there is to know about a cow, from anatomy, physiology, nutrition, and lactation. So when there's issues with lactation and your wife is having some problems, it's natural to go back into your memory and pull out some solutions that you learned. But there is a really fine line to walk whenever you're comparing your wife to a cow. So just wanted to address that, and then explain to your wife how she is different from that cow. I think that's a very key point to all this, and then talk about the subtle similarities between cows and women.
Mhm. And then always end with telling her she's doing a great job.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Always end with some encouragement.
Yep. I do feel like there are certain compliments that you've given me that only a dairyman could understand. Like if I was ever told that I was a high producing heifer, like that
Yeah,
meant
like
a
you're
lot.
crushing your lactation
Yeah.
right now. Like, just so excited
That
about
means so much to me. I knew there were a lot of benefits to being married to you, but I didn't know like I would be married to a dairyman meant I got to go home from the hospital with my very own personal lactation consultant. And I feel like there were a lot of questions that I had had, especially early on. I didn't know much about colostrum or breastfeeding. My background knowledge on that is very minimal, and until we had a baby. Even throughout pregnancy, you were familiar with certain terms and things. And then when we were in the hospital about to give birth to our first baby, the nurses and doctors were rattling off different like levels and hormones and different responses, and you were just talking with them like you knew what they were talking about, and that was all, yeah, news to me.
it.
So like the way, like the different hormones that are released naturally, like your body produces certain things like while you're pregnant, and then I always thought it was fascinating that after passing the placenta out through the birth canal, that's when your body would start producing milk. But how does that even happen?
Yeah, so the whole birthing process, I'd say, is similar between cows and women, but the lactation curve is a lot different. So first, when there's what they call is passive transfer, so transferring immunity into the baby, and cows do it through colostrum, actually. So a calf is born without an immune system, is fully reliant on the bioactive molecules in colostrum to establish their gut and their immune system. But humans, they get the passive transfer of immunity through the placenta. So right out of the gate, literally two separate, you know, differences between cows and women. What's interesting is that right away, both cows and women produce colostrum. Cows produce 100 times more colostrum than humans.
Really, 100
Yeah,
times?
literally
Oh.
100 times. Yes.
I mean, I guess when I'm pumping bottles, they're just mini bottles.
Yeah.
How much, tell us, how much does an average cow, I know that's such a broad number, but an average Holstein,
Yeah, a healthy cow would give like 2 to 3 gallons of colostrum, and in the first milking.
oh,
And
what?
then humans will produce colostrum for probably 1 to 3 days.
Uh-huh.
Cows generally, it's actually pretty similar, about 3 days. But what's interesting is then there's the drop in milk, the lactogenesis they call it. Prolactin is the hormone that comes in and helps drop the milk. Humans will actually hit their peak lactation like 3 to 6 weeks in, and cows will hit their peak production about average of 60 days
Oh.
uh, post calving.
Oh, interesting. I'm
Yep.
glad you didn't call my or any of our kids' birth calving, post calving.
Yeah. Yep. I probably did early
Yeah.
on,
No,
but
I not that I remember. Well, prolactin I was so fascinated by because for a human's body, when I'm pregnant, my body produces prolactin, but it's suppressed until the placenta passes through the birth canal. And like the suppressing, I guess, helps like make you not start producing milk yet. But then
yeah.
once prolactin is not suppressed, now you're able to actually produce milk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's like an inverse relationship, and we don't need to go too into the details, but with progesterone and prolactin. So when you calve, you the progesterone drops, prolactin goes up,
Uh-huh.
you produce your colostrum, and then the milk sets in, and then you go from there.
One of my favorite things about being married to my own lactation consultant slash dairyman was how compassionate you were to me being like relaxed. And I feel like especially with our first baby, if like I was learning this whole art of breastfeeding and sometimes it was hard and there were different challenges, but there were a few times where you would be like, oh, do you need are you comfortable, do you want to go in a quiet room, can I get you some water, like stuff like that. So tell me a little bit about why you were so kind.
Yes. Yeah. So as a dairy farmer, it's our job to make sure that the cows are as comfortable, as healthy, as relaxed as possible, like 24/7. And the reason is because they are more efficient and they produce a lot more milk when they are in that like rest and digest mode. So just like diving into the science a little bit, we each have a autonomic nervous system, and there's two modes in that nervous system. You have the fight or flight mode, and then you have the rest and digest mode. And when you're in rest and digest, then your whole body is functioning how it should properly. Your vagus nerve is flowing, which is the nerve that connects your brain to your organs and your digestive system. Um, like for instance, if you see food and you start salivating, like that means your vagus nerve is working really well, and it's creating those enzymes that's going to break down that food and you can digest it properly.
Wow.
And for cows, that's so important because when they're in fight or flight, that is when everything kind of freezes. They go into survival mode, and all their energy and nutrients, everything stops flowing because they're just focused on how do you survive in these next couple moments, and then there's that lasts for a while. So they will not drop their milk. They won't release oxytocin.
Yeah.
They stop digesting properly. They're not, able to rest in that mode. So yeah, so when you are pregnant, it's the same, and it's really important that you stay in that rest and digest, so you can just maximize your efficiency in production.
When I'm breastfeeding, yeah. So I feel like a common theme for a breastfeeding mom and having a newborn baby is just this exhaustion, just being so tired and you're not getting enough sleep because your baby is learning when to sleep, when to eat, and you're like getting on that rhythm. You're also making so many more decisions than you had before. Do cows deal with any like, I don't know, operating on lower levels of energy?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a subtle similarity here. Cows actually do deal with a negative energy balance after they have a calf, and the reason is because first of all, you go through the whole birthing process, just like women, and it's so taxing on your body.
hmm
And then your body gets like destroyed and it has to repair itself. So
Right.
there's so much energy, and that goes into that, and your immune system is being called on constantly to repair itself, which takes energy
hmm
to do as well. But at the same time, I guess producing colostrum, and then your body adjusts and starts producing milk, and you like all of that just takes energy.
I know. It's amazing what the
Y-
body can do.
Yeah.
Like that to be heal and produce at the same time.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a term for humans,
Yeah.
but for cows, it's negative energy balance. So
Yeah.
right when they have a calf, it's something as a dairy farmer you have to be very aware of, that you don't let your cows get into that negative energy balance where they're, the demand on their body is more than what they're actually supplying their body through food.
Mhm.
So we have, rations, which are meals for cows that are formulated to capture everything that a cow needs in order to continue to maintain her body composition, to repair her body, and to produce milk all at the
Yeah.
same time. Like, it's so much going on.
So wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I love, like, with the beef liver as one of our supplements, it's like the most comprehensive supplement you can get because, especially postpartum, a woman's body is going through so much, like healing after giving birth and now producing milk and just maintaining my own composition and
Yeah. So
energy
quick,
levels.
quick WonderCow plug
Yes. I know.
on a couple of our products were designed specifically for this. So
Totally,
let's
I'm
talk about
so
it.
thankful. I know.
Yeah.
Well, another one is anyone who has a baby or has been pregnant might recognize the term the mom brain.
Yeah.
So the mom brain is kind of like this brain fog where I will be, I don't know, looking for my sunglasses when they're on top of my head or asking in the kitchen, can you pass me and I can't think of the word spoon, like my little 2-year-old is filling in the blank before I can like recall that word. But it is cool that with like the mommy brain, now we have Wonder Cream, which is one of our products that has lion's mane in it, which just helps mental clarity. And then,
The MCT
mhm,
coconut oil for like clean energy
yeah, fuel.
fuel. And then colostrum, just like overall immunity to help your body rebuild after having a baby.
Yeah, that was one thing I had never considered when you have always like explained if our kids or even us, if we are fighting something, if our immune system is being worked, then we might it makes sense that we would feel more exhausted because different parts of our body are having to work overtime
Yeah,
to,
and they're drawing the energy from you.
right. Yeah. I
Yep.
also feel like I'm replaying with that first baby. If ever we were out in public, even if I had a nursing cover, I was a little bit stressed about like getting the baby to latch and all of that. So then a lot of times the baby probably could sense that I wasn't relaxed. And so now she's flailing her arms and now I'm super conscious. Can anyone see me? And I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
and you're not letting down your milk, so
oh,
then the baby's, upset.
right.
It's really important when cows go into the milking parlor that it's extremely quiet and calm, that no one is making loud noises or can spook them, because they have to be primed to release that oxytocin, which oxytocin helps release the milk from the mammary glands down into the teat canals, so then the milk machines can massage that milk out properly. But if it doesn't do that, you can't get that milk.
Wow.
Even if you put a milking machine on a cow, if she's not releasing oxytocin, you're not getting any milk out of her,
Wow. Yeah.
which is an issue because then
Uh-huh.
you get the udder pressure and yeah, you lose milk production.
Yep. Oh man, do we want to dive into udder pressure right away? This was something that like super intimidated me. So a dairy term that used to scare me, but is very relatable is udder pressure. And I know you want to avoid the cows experiencing udder pressure, but as a breastfeeding mama, that is relatable because when your milk first comes in, there's this pressure and we want to alleviate it. And how have you alleviated it for your cows?
Yeah. So it's super interesting. The body is just amazing. The body will produce the amount of milk that the baby needs, and
Mhm.
nothing less, nothing more, as long as the nutrition's right.
Mhm.
When the baby's weaning off, then there will be more pressure in the udder
Mhm.
and or in the mammary gland, and it will start shedding these cells that make the milk,
Mhm.
and then they will just over time just produce less and less milk.
Mhm. And at first, that term used to scare me. He would say these sloughing off of cells, your epithelial cells, which are the ones that make milk.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's for the best because we don't want to be lactating forever. So, of course, there needs to be like a way for, as the baby's weaning, for the mom's body to stop producing milk.
Yeah.
So it's,
But it's something like, as a dairy farmer, that like scares
yeah.
us, because you'll see a cow, like cows are in the pen that are right about to get milked, and they all bunch up against the
Oh.
fence, and they're like trying to push because they want to go to the milking parlor so bad and alleviate that pressure. But you don't want the pressure there because
Right.
you know those cells are sloughing off and you're
Right.
losing production.
Yep.
So that's why most dairies, to maximize production, will milk 3 times a day
Hmm.
instead of twice a day, just to alleviate that pressure. And they actually will produce up to 10% more if they're milked 3 times a day versus two.
Yeah, yep, totally makes sense. And humans are on a little different schedule. I feel like most of our kids, we were able to get on like an every 3 hour nursing schedule. And then hopefully through the night, they could go the full like 10-hour stretch or something.
Yeah. So as a woman, I think one thing that you have done is like in between milkings every once in a while, or if the baby's not there to be milked, like you will still milk with the machine to, and you can talk about that. Like,
Well, I was just laughing between it. I've never called it milkings, like in between milkings.
yeah, in between feedings,
Yes. Uh-huh.
you can milk into a bottle. At least you're, relieving that pressure. Your epithelial cells are, doing great. They're happy. They're going to
Yep.
continue to produce.
Well, I will say Rob had coached me, especially at the beginning. And so with our first baby, if I had her on the every 3 hour nursing schedule, then when I went back to work, then I was pumping on the dot every 3 hours because I didn't want any udder pressure. I didn't want to slough off any epithelial cells. But what I just want everyone else to know, it's more relaxed. Like in general, just let nature do its work. Like it doesn't have to be quite on the minute. You had touched a little bit about how there's all these different factors that affect milk production. As a breastfeeding mama, I feel like it was so, I guess, incentivizing when I realized, especially for those first 6 months, if my baby's not consuming any other food, everything that he or she needs is coming from the milk that I'm producing. So, what I put into my body is hugely important. And I think on average, a breastfeeding mom needs to consume like 400 more calories than not breastfeeding just to actually produce milk, which I
Mhm.
feel like is very relatable because I did not know how hungry I would be. And I vividly remember after our first baby was born, someone had set up a meal train for us, which was great. Friends and family were bringing us dinners like every other night. And I remember seeing this big 9 by 13 dish of chicken enchiladas, and I just scooped like multiple servings after my plate, and they just went down so easy. I was just this like never ending
I
pit. I
understood.
was, yes, so
I get it.
hungry. Yeah. But is there kind of a difference between quantity and quality of milk,
For
right?
sure. So a cow ration, what they consume directly impacts the quality of the milk,
Okay.
and the composition of the milk. And so
Composition meaning like how much,
fat and how much protein,
yeah.
how much, lactose and the overall quantity of the milk production as well.
Hmm.
And so we have, I guess, our nutritionist formulates a ration, I guess we can start with like fiber. And you add all these things like starches and proteins and fats and fiber. And as you add all these things, the cow will break that down differently and it'll create in its stomach these volatile fatty acids. There's 3 main ones. So acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And for example, like the more alfalfa and fiber that you feed a cow, that feeds the acetate in her stomach,
Okay.
which will create more milk fat.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, for example, like starches will create more volatile fatty acid propionate, which actually helps you produce more milk.
Okay, so I feel like for me, especially if I'm consuming a lot of like spinach and broccoli, now I can see like if I pump a bottle, there's like a lot of cream is what it looks like a lot of the thicker milk fat.
Hmm.
But they say if you're trying to boost your milk production, then make sure you're getting enough like carbs. And so like going for oatmeal and making sure you're, yeah, having a lot of like healthy carbs. I do remember also being told like when you're breastfeeding, anything that you consume is going to end up being used to produce milk. So I felt really justified in making like oatmeal chocolate chip cookies every Monday because my body needed it.
Yep. And I think a key one too, just to highlight, is fiber.
Mm.
And a cow can consume too much fiber, actually. I think it's probably really hard for humans.
Oh.
And that is a subtle difference.
Yeah.
Um, because humans generally don't eat enough fiber.
Mm.
Which I think you do a really good job at doing, and helping our whole family consume enough fiber. But what fiber does from a cow is like So they eat it, these long particles of fiber, it goes into their stomach, and then they ruminate it, and cows are ruminants for this reason. So they'll actually gurgle it back up and then chew it to break it down more to smaller particles that then they swallow again, and then their body can pass it on to the next stomach, because that cows have 4 stomachs.
That's right.
And then each stomach will extract the nutrients from those foods differently.
Wow.
Once it's a certain particle size, though.
Mm-hmm.
So what's cool about rumination is a big part of that. The benefit of ruminating is the saliva.
Oh.
So they ruminate, and then they create more saliva as they're chewing more, and then that saliva has the enzymes that help break down the food even more, so it can be absorbed and used from the body.
Wow.
Okay, but if you feed them too much fiber, you can say, hey, like, I'm going to feed them fiber and drive up that milk fat as much as possible. But the problem is, the more they get to a certain point where it stretches out the receptors in their stomach, and it triggers a signal to their brain to stop eating. So it's called the satiety effect.
Mm-hmm.
And then they may not get the nutrients that they need because their brain is telling them that they're full to stop eating, when really they need to keep eating to get those nutrients. So that's why it's so important for nutritionists to just dial in those nutrients along with the ratio to fiber, so they will consume enough of the nutrients that they need.
That's so interesting, and not related to breastfeeding, but I'm wondering if, like, just from a human consumption standpoint, if most people aren't consuming enough fiber, they're not reaching that level of satiety. So then they're going to keep eating. Like, I could just like keep eating 10 cookies because I'm not reaching that like satiety level if I don't have the fiber. But when you mentioned having like making sure you're having enough like carbs and starches, that's what's going to help boost your milk production. So I do feel like they recommend, if you're trying to increase the amount of milk that your body produces, making sure
Cookies.
yeah, eat more cookies, or oatmeal, breads, grains, like all of that is going to help make sure, help boost your actual production. Something that you mentioned was how much water it takes to produce milk. I feel like for anyone, any of those breastfeeding moms out there, they know the phobia of sitting down to nurse your baby and not having your water with me. I can't tell you, probably remember any time I like sat down, if I didn't have water with me, I just felt like I was immediately parched. I needed it.
Yes.
And I think the rule of thumb for a human, if you're breastfeeding, is to drink at least 4 to 6 cups in addition to your standard. So I think you're at like 16 cups. What is a cow? What is a breastfeeding cow? Lactating cow?
Yes.
Needs-
So like peak production cow is consuming like up to 50 gallons of water a day.
50 gallons of water.
So the other part of that is like they're consuming so much,
Uh-huh.
it's turning into milk. But the quality of that water is crazy important too. So it's really important, they drink from these troughs, that they're getting enough, and that we're keeping that water as clean as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. That's crazy. Thanks for listening. Hope you learned something. If you want to check us out, our website is WonderCow.com. You can find us on shelves at Sprouts and on Amazon.
And that's a wrap.